The 1959 Chevrolet Brookwood sits in the driveway at 4:15 in the morning, rear end riding lower than Chevrolet intended. Everything the Callahans own is packed inside it or close enough to everything that the difference has stopped mattering. Two suitcases of clothes, a box of the children's things, a cardboard box of photographs sealed with a full roll of tape. The one item Dottie said she wouldn't leave if the car caught fire. The furniture, the curtain rods, most of the kitchen, she gave to neighbors. Roy stands in the driveway looking at the rented house for what he knows is the last time. The porch light is still on. He meant to turn it off. He leaves it burning for no reason he could explain to anyone. Dottie had gotten Terry and June into the back seat at 3:45. Terry was 8 and climbed in without complaint. June was 5 and was asleep before the doors closed. They are both asleep now, heads resting against each other, breathing slow. The Brookwood was Chevrolet's base wagon for 1959. Two-door, no extras, the model most buyers walked past on the lot. Roy paid $1,100 for it last summer when staying still seemed possible. The inline six turns over in the pre-dawn cold without hesitation. Roy sits in the driver's seat a moment before putting it in reverse. The Brookwood smells like rubber and packed soap and something older underneath. The fuel gauge needle rests against the full mark. The car rolls backward out of the driveway at 4:31 in the morning, rear springs working against the load, headlights sweeping the neighbor's fence. Then Route 66 is ahead of them and Tulsa is behind. Route 66 runs straight west through the industrial edge of Tulsa and out past Sapulpa. Dottie watches the city lights drop away behind them. Nothing needs to be said. By the time the sky starts going gray, they are past Sapulpa and the land has opened flat. Winter grass, flat horizon, Oklahoma in March before the green has decided. Terry wakes in the back and asks how far. Roy tells him to go back to sleep. The Brookwood's radio picks up an Oklahoma City station. Country music. Then news, then country again. Roy listens briefly and turns it off. The six-cylinder has its own rhythm at highway speed and he trusts it more. Oklahoma City comes and goes in 40 minutes. They stop for gas at a Sinclair station west of El Reno. The attendant fills the tank and checks the oil without being asked. Dottie buys breakfast at the diner beside the Sinclair. Eggs for Roy, toast and juice for the children. She counts the money carefully when she pays. $230. A phone number written on a piece of ruled paper. That is what they have. Roy walks back to the Brookwood in the El Reno lot and stands a moment with his hand on the door handle. West of here, there is nothing he recognizes. That should feel worse than it does. Before we follow Roy any further, if this is the kind of story you've been looking for, subscribe to the channel. Every video here is built around a real American car, a real road, and a life that changed somewhere on the asphalt. No filler. If that matters to you, the subscribe button is right there. And leave a comment. Have you ever driven a loaded car out of a town you weren't planning to come back to? What road? What year? What car? Now, back to Roy Callahan and the Brookwood, still pointed west. West of El Reno, the land flattens further and the wind picks up from the north. By Elk City, the sky has gone to a long gray and the road ahead has no bends Roy can see from here. Dottie has the road atlas on her knees. A 1958 Rand McNally Roy's pencil line running from Tulsa to Bakersfield. She traces it with her finger through the Texas panhandle. Shamrock, McLean, Amarillo. The line is longer than the map makes it look. The Texas line comes without ceremony. A sign and a slight roughness where the two states' asphalt doesn't quite match. The Callahans cross it at 11:40 without speaking. The wind gets worse on the Texas side. In Shamrock, they stop for lunch and Roy checks the oil. The six-cylinder is running clean, no burn. At the diner, a waitress refills Dottie's coffee and asks where they're headed. California, Dottie says. The waitress nods like she's heard this before. She has. Amarillo comes up in pale afternoon, feedlot smell arriving a mile before the city. Roy takes the bypass through downtown, past Hotel Neon, and a Phillips 66 with 6 pumps. The Brookwood is one of 100 cars on this stretch, all of them going somewhere. They stop for the night in Tucumcari, New Mexico, the Blue Swallow Motor Court, $6 a room. The children are asleep before Roy carries the bags inside. He and Dottie drink thermos coffee on the concrete step outside without saying much. Roy stays on the concrete step after Dottie goes in. He thinks about 6 years at the Douglas plant and the foreman's name on the paper in her purse. He does not think about turning around. That road is already behind him. Dawn on the second day comes cold and flat over the New Mexico desert. Roy has the Brookwood warming at 6:10, watching exhaust drift in the still air. The children eat cereal from the small boxes Dottie bought in El Reno. The highway runs through New Mexico in near silence. The Sangre de Cristo Range shows to the north, blue-gray, distant. The desert floor is flat and light-colored in a way that Oklahoma never was. Albuquerque is the biggest city they will see before California. Roy takes the Central Avenue alignment through the old Route 66 commercial strip, motor courts and trading posts and diners pushing against the highway. Both kids have their faces pressed to the windows. Roy adds a quart of oil in Albuquerque. A mechanic at the standard station looks under the hood without being asked and says the engine is fine, just working hard. Roy thanks him, pays for the oil, and drives west. West of Albuquerque, the road begins climbing toward the Continental Divide, and Roy feels the Brookwood working, the six-cylinder pulling harder, breathing differently at altitude. The loaded wagon takes the grade without losing ground. The Continental Divide crosses Route 66 at Thoreau, New Mexico, just a roadside marker and the knowledge that every drop of water from here runs toward the Pacific. Roy sees the sign. He doesn't slow down. Gallup is a gateway. Red mesas beginning to show to the south, trading posts along the highway selling turquoise and rugs and things Roy has never seen in Oklahoma. Dottie buys a small piece of turquoise for 75 cents. The Arizona line comes in the last light of the second afternoon. The mesas are higher now, the red rock more insistent. The Brookwood runs through the long rock-faced shadows, and the light turns everything the color of old brick. Terry sees a sign for the petrified forest and asks if they can stop. Roy says maybe on the way back. He says it without thinking, and then the words sit there between him and Dottie for a moment before she turns to the window and lets it go. They stop in Winslow for the night at Route 66 Motor Court, $5. The room smells of previous guests, which Roy decides is preferable to thinking about. The Brookwood is parked outside the door, and he lies in bed listening to the wind press against its windows. Third morning. Roy checks all 4 tires in the gray pre-dawn, all holding. The Brookwood's rear springs have either adapted to the load or Roy has stopped noticing them. Either way, the car is ready before the family is. Flagstaff sits at nearly 7,000 feet, and Roy feels the 6-cylinder working differently at altitude. The pines here are a surprise. Both children press to the windows, unused to trees this tall. West of Flagstaff, the road begins its long descent toward the Mojave. Williams, then Ash Fork, the land opening wider and lower. The Brookwood's brakes do work here they never had to do in Oklahoma. Roy rides them short and firm. Between Ash Fork and Kingman, Dottie says the kids will need a school. Roy says he knows. She says they'll need a doctor's name. He says the sister-in-law will have one. She says okay, the kind of okay a person says when they've been holding something a long time. In Kingman, the road begins its real descent. Sitgreaves Pass and then the long drop toward the Colorado River. The Brookwood takes the switchbacks at 35, rear-end heavy, steering demanding. Roy gives it his full attention. The Mojave is vast below. The Colorado River crossing at Topak is the moment Roy knows, without ceremony, without announcement, that they are done with the middle of the country. California is on the other side of this water. He drives across without stopping. The Welcome to California sign is smaller than Roy expected. Dottie reads it aloud, not dramatically, just stating it. Terry and June look up from what they're doing. The Mojave on the California side looks exactly like the Mojave on the Arizona side. Barstow announces itself with heat, even in March. Roy fills the tank and adds water to the radiator. The 6-cylinder has crossed 4 state lines and a mountain range and is still running clean. He is relieved anyway. West of Barstow, the road runs ruler straight across the Mojave floor. Roy opens the Brookwood up to 75 for the first time since Oklahoma. The desert is flat and white with alkali. The sky above it is a hard, bright California blue he has never seen at home. The Cajun Pass is where the Mojave ends and Southern California begins. The Brookwood climbs it in third gear, and then the descent opens a view that stops Dottie mid-sentence. The San Bernardino Valley spread below, green and real and enormous. San Bernardino comes up fast. Palm trees and gas stations and a highway that becomes a boulevard that becomes a city street in about 3 miles. Roy keeps the Brookwood in the right lane and moves through it carefully. North of San Bernardino, they pick up Route 99 and the land flattens. Orange groves on both sides, oil pump jacks in the middle distance. The air through Roy's cracked window is different. Not better than Oklahoma, not worse. Just from somewhere else entirely. The Bakersfield radio stations come in south of Delano, country music, because Bakersfield was already building a version of country that Nashville hadn't invented yet. Roy doesn't know this. He just knows it sounds like something he understands. They enter Bakersfield from the south on Route 99 at 4:47 in the afternoon of the 4th day. Roy does not know what he expected it to look like. It looks like Tulsa in some places and nothing like Tulsa in others. The sister-in-law's house is on Beale Avenue. 3 bedrooms, a lemon tree in the backyard. She has beds for the children and coffee on the stove. She says, "You made it." Dottie says, "We did." Roy carries the boxes inside in 3 trips and says nothing at all. The Brookwood sits in the sister-in-law's driveway for a week before Roy finds his own place to park it. He washes it one Sunday in January, California winter being nothing like any winter he knows. For the first time since Tulsa, he can see the car clearly. Roy starts at the oilfield crew in February. Kern County crude, long days, physical work he understands. By spring, they have a rented house 2 blocks from Terry's school. Dottie takes work as a bookkeeper on Chester Avenue. The family is settling. Roy and Dottie Callahan do not go back to Tulsa. Not for a visit, not for a funeral, not for any reason that ever arrives clearly enough to act on. There is no rupture. Tulsa simply stops being somewhere they can imagine, and then it stops being anywhere. Roy sells the Brookwood in 1967. $80 to a neighbor's son who wants it for parts. By then, it has 94,000 miles on the clock and the rear springs are gone. Roy watches it back out of the driveway and goes inside. Roy Callahan will live in Bakersfield for the rest of his life, and Dottie will too. Terry and June will grow up California with no memory of Tulsa except the way old places live in the body, in the sound a screen door makes, in the way Roy still glances west from habit, never east. If these road stories are what you want to keep watching, subscribe to the channel. More cars, more roads, more lives live behind a steering wheel that meant something. And if you ever drove a car like this, or knew someone who did, tell us in the comments. What car, what road, where it took you. The cars remember everything, so do the people who drove them. Makisara.